All right. Happy Friday. Sorry there's late notice impromptu stream, which has become my norm this summer. Not intentionally, but it has. Interesting circumstances. This whole week has been fun, and then started off with a funeral. Not fun. Uh, my wife's grandmother passed away. She was 96 and had been in ill health with and it sort of kind of, I don't know if it was technically dementia, but definitely her mental acuity was kind of failing her a bit. So not that you ever expect something like that to happen, but we were kind of, I don't know, you just get to a point, folks at a certain age, when it sort of happens, there's a little bit of a, okay, it finally kind of happened sort of thing. So we went to the funeral was on, so obviously I didn't stream that day. And then I hate to start something else horrible, but it happened, and I guess it's on my mind. It's just a weird thing. A classmate of my daughter's died yesterday, and she died my daughter goes to a summer program that's at her school and a lot of other her classmates also go to this summer program, and it's great. It's something that the city started offering a couple of years ago, and it's if you get in, it's kind of lottery bound, so it's not for sure getting in, but we've applied for it. We've been in, and it's free, so it takes a big expense off of our shoulders. Anybody with kids, I'm sure has seen or knows how much camps and summer programs. Oh, I got my suit from the funeral. The sorry, that's bothering me, and I've meant to take it off before. That's the sort of thing I keep my suit for the funeral, and it was draped over the back of the chair. Anyway, so it's this free summer program, free for us, and it's great. And it's got a lot of her kids, a lot of her other kids from her school, from her class. And just out of the blue yesterday, I guess they were in the hallway, and one of the girls just had convulsions, or I don't know, seizure, convulsions, whatever you want to call it, hanging, and ended up passing away. And we found out kind of in the night what happened. I was out of the studio or the home yesterday. I met up with Diogo, Old Skull, I think is what his handle goes. His last name is Nogueira. I'm sure I'm butchering it. He's from Brazil. He's done a lot of, I think he did, he was, or I don't know if he was the sole creator or was involved with, was that like swords, like sharp swords and sinister spells, or that book, and a couple other books. He's a wonderful artist and creator, and he had mentioned that he was in New York, so I reached out to him about meeting up. So we hung out yesterday, went to the venerable complete strategist, had fun, had lunch, and then when I come home at night, find out that this poor girl in my daughter's class passed away from these seizures. And the horrible thing is that it happened, and my wife went to pick up our daughter, and our daughter's telling her about what happened, and we're all trying to allay their fears. Oh, I'm sure it's fine, it's a seizure, it's she'll get help, whatever. And then turned out that it was the opposite of fine. So just a little shout out, poor girl, like 8 or 9 years old. Awful thing. I didn't know her family personally, but one of Agnes's, my daughter Agnes, her really close friends, was like that girl was her best friend. And so it's going to be some rough times coming up, and it was part of why I was delayed kind of getting anything going today, because that was sort of with that. So that was rough, but also hung out with Daniel Bandits Keep last night. His game wasn't on, but I was in Manhattan already, so I said, hey, you want to meet up? We did. Talked a lot of fun gaming stuff. He was telling me about his Gen Con experiences, and we were chatting a lot about kind of OD&D ish stuff. I like, he's really kind of all in on a lot of the OD&D systems, so I like chatting that stuff up. Thanks, Frederick, for the prayers. It's nice. Frederick also says that the Dolmenwood Kickstarter hit 800,000. Yeah, Diogo was telling me, we were kind of wrapping up. We're sort of getting we were in this kind of mall. Yeah, I guess it is technically a mall, and got some bubble tea. And he said something like, "Oh, I asked him if he was going to back the Dolmenwood. He says, yeah, I want to support Gavin. I'm like, man, that guy, I kind of laughed. I said, I don't know if he needs your support. And yeah, 800,000 is a big number, but congrats to them. So I have a couple of things on the docket, and then I thought we would freelance, and maybe I'll start doing this as a thing, looking at some of the Kickstarter stuff that's out there. I have the Kickstarter page open. I don't have we'll see with some of the things I have, and then we'll go on from there. As usual, I'm always kind of scrambling around looking for stuff, and in the post Reddit world, it's a little bit more difficult. I haven't got my, it's only to figure out RSS reader situation or whatever to do to figure that out. But RPG Grandma and sent this link to their blog, which is bubblegumspaceopera.blogspot.com, where she had put an article out about Metamorphosis Alpha. So I thought we could start there and then see where time takes us. I have another one. I did this one I had read this morning, but I want to reread it that was posted to the Trilemma Adventures blog, and then maybe we can look at Kickstarter. We can look at whatever, and obviously, if you guys have things in the chat, that topics you want to talk about or articles, I'm here for you. So let's get started. So this was from last week. Metamorphosis Alpha, understanding PC abilities, mental resistance. In the previous post, I discussed the rulebook's layout and started looking at the differences between Metamorphosis Alpha, Dungeons & Dragons, and Gamma World abilities. This post takes a deeper look at Metamorphosis Alpha's abilities and how they affect gameplay. Mental resistance is the second ability given for Metamorphosis Alpha player characters. I will cover radiation resistance and constitution together in a future post. Okay, great. So we're going to look at mental resistance. This is the player character's ability to withstand an attack on his or her mind by mental energy. This ability is strengthened by use. And we have a quote. The rationale behind this is that the mind, after surviving an attack, forms new barriers to that type of attack. I don't know if the colon is, I assume that's coming from just the text. These barriers are always up without thought or special effort on the part of the player. Therefore, for every 5 aggressive mental attacks which a being survives and resists successfully, his or her mental resistance factor increases by 1 until he or she reaches the 18 figure. And then another quote, every mutation that has more than 1 mental power must have at least a mental resistance of 12. And we have a couple more quotes. When rolling for simultaneous attacks, if both players make the roll needed, both of the attacks negate each other. Physical action prohibits a being from making a mental attack. And then finally, mental activity by one being is not interrupted by a mental attack from another being. That is, defense against the attack may be made while continuing the activity. A successful mental attack will have an effect depending on its type. And then parenthetically, mental blast, illusion generation, etc., not necessarily interrupting the original activity. So that's a bunch of stuff I'm presuming from Metamorphosis Alpha. And then we have a mental strength chart with mental resist, and then the power of the being attacked. With, I guess I have Metamorphosis Alpha. It's been a long time since I've looked at it, so I don't presume. So here's your, let's see, the power. Is it the roll? So if your mental resistance is 18, you need at least a power of 10. And then on a D20, I imagine you have to roll, or is it 3D6? I don't know. Assuming it's a D20, you'd have to roll 18 or better. And then that's kind of cool because at 18, so an 18 versus 18, or any number versus its opposing number that's equal, will be a 50% chance. So if everything being equal, defense and attack, then you have a 50-50 shot. And then it just sort of, depending on if you're stronger or weaker, the scales shift one way or another. We have some other quotes. The power of the being attacking is equal to his original mental resistance before it was adjusted for defects or experience. A number is the score which must be beaten on a roll of 3d6. Oh, it is 6-sided dice. Well, that makes those 18s a lot tougher. Star means that the attack is successful without a roll. -- means there's no attack possible in that situation. Any being or mutation that does not have a stated mental resistance factor has a 3 for the purposes of this game. This chart is used for any type of mental attack. Okay, so that's all from Metamorphosis Alpha. Now we're flash forwarding to Gamma World, and we could see what has remained the same and what changes have been made. So in Gamma World, we have mental strength. Like Metamorphosis Alpha, the attribute deals with the character's ability to control both offensively and defensively psionic energies. For beings possessing no mental mutations, such as pure strain humans, the mental strength rating is used simply for defense during mental attacks. For characters or creatures with mental mutations, this rating is used for both offense and defense. Also, unlike other basic attribute ratings, mental strength increases with use. After initiative has been determined, the attacker announces his intention to the referee and states the type of attack. Then the referee cross-indexes the attacker's mental strength against the defender's mental strength and determines the dice roll needed for the attack to be successful. A 20-sided die is rolled in Gamma World, unlike the 3d6 in Metamorphosis Alpha. If the number rolled is equal to or larger than the number indicated on the matrix, the mental attack is successful, and the results of the attack are immediately applied. I just want to back up there. So using a 3d6 is pretty interesting because it does mean that your average on a 3d6 is 10, and that's calculated. I don't know all the mathematics behind it, but basically on any of these dice, and I don't know if it's only for certain types of dice, but I think it's pretty much any die. The average is basically you can divide the number of faces in half and put a 0.5 after it, and that's the average. So on a 6-sided die, your average is 3.5, 10-sided die 5.5, so on and so forth. So when you roll a 3d6, it's 3.5 plus 3.5 plus 3.5, giving you 10.5, right? 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7. 7 plus 3.5 is 10.5. So it actually, you do get a slight bit of favoritism towards the attacker because there is no 0.5. So you could probably round it up and say, real world, it's actually 11, but at least 10. So 10, 11, right in there, that does give a slight advantage to the attacker. And it's the same thing with the D20. The difference being that you don't have that hump in the middle of your probabilities because it's 5% for every face. So from 1 to 20, any one of those numbers is 5%. So to get an 18 or above, it's 18, 19, 20, 3 times 5%, so 15% chance. If you're using 3d6 on the other hand, I don't know the chances of getting an 18, but it's way lower than that. It's probably like 1.5%, maybe less, probably less. Yeah, because it would be like 16% times 16% times 16%, something like that, or 16, whatever the 16.6667 times. So you're going to get probably something like 1.66 or 1.5, somewhere in there. So it's quite a bit less likely you're going to get an 18 than on your flat D20. All right, so now let's go back to where we were. Here's we have some more quotes. The mental defense, the mental strength of the defender, is always present. This defense is independent of all actions by the individual, such as making a physical attack or sleeping. It is also present even when making a mental attack. The only restriction on mental attacks is that they must be made separate from physical attacks. One may not make both a mental and physical attack in the same melee round. Damage sustained as the result of a mental attack is figured in the same manner as in physical combat. This is basically the same rule as we see in Metamorphosis Alpha. It is important, and this is another quote, it is important to remember that each mental power is different from all others, and selection of such power for combat purposes should be made very carefully. Some powers are indiscriminate, affecting all within range. Some have limited duration, and so forth. Also, some mental mutations will entirely negate the effects of other mental mutations. This warning is missing from Metamorphosis Alpha. And then another quote, successful use of mental powers in a combat situation also works towards increasing a being's mental strength in the following manner. For every 5 successful mental attacks, those which cause damage, the attacker's mental strength increases by 1 point. The same increase works in a like manner for defense. For every 5 successful mental defenses, those attacks which do not cause damage, the defender's mental strength increases by 1 point. The rationale behind these increases is that so we're kind of getting the same thing. And then the commentary on this is here we see the increase in a being's mental strength is still linked to the number 5, but now applies to both successful defense and attacks. In addition, no reference is made to using only the raw unmodified mental strength score for the attacker. Thus, in Gamma World, the mental strength improvements are not strictly for defense. Like Metamorphosis Alpha, the mental strength of the attacker is cross-indexed with the mental strength of the defender. The result is the number the attacker must equal or exceed on the roll of a 20-sided die in order to score a successful mental attack. A comparison of the two matrices do show similarities and differences, mainly caused by the change from using 3d6 dice to the 20-sided die. The matrices appear different because of the layout. However, mathematically, they're very similar. So they've changed. So we have the defender, then we have the attacker, and I think you end up getting about the same thing. Yeah. So we get A, which I guess is automatic, or just wait. So if the mental defender strength is 3, right? So if you have a tiny mental strength against a really powerful attack, it's automatic, and then slowly ramps up so you get to 3 on the other side, in which case it's even Stevens, and so you still get those grades. Oh, okay, I see. So yeah, attack is automatically successful is on A, and then NE, no effect, attack is impossible. The only interesting thing here is there is still, it seems like, a slight advantage to the attacker in that you have, even at 20, that's still a 5% chance, which is better than getting an 18 in Metamorphosis Alpha. And then it's a smaller segment. Your attack is impossible against a smaller segment of you can be of low attack power and get off. So all you need is attack power of 8, and you can hit anybody, as even though it might seem unlikely. Whereas you need to make it to, yeah. So you need let's see. So to get anything in 8. On the other hand, yeah, I think that's it. So whereas the attackers, there's a much bigger window. Whereas against 3, if you have just 12 or above, you're auto hitting. So attackers retain a slight advantage. Now, D&D did not have a similar ability score for psionics, but instead had separate and completely different rules found in Eldritch Wizardry, which would be a whole other article just to explain. I have Eldritch Wizardry. I should probably pull that out at some point. We could read through the psionics rules. Finally, this brings us to the problem of the intelligence ability that appears to be missing in Metamorphosis Alpha, but is present in D&D and Gamma World. When I went through the positive mental mutations in Metamorphosis Alpha, heightened intelligence modifies mental resistance by increasing it by 4 up to the maximum of 18, improves the mutant's chances to figure out ancient ship technology, and a necessity for plant or animal mutants to be able to communicate or act logically. This means in Metamorphosis Alpha, mental resistance doubles as intelligence, whereas in Gamma World, intelligence was split from mental strength to create 2 separate abilities. Based also on heightened intelligence, I would also argue D&D's 2 ability scores of wisdom and intelligence are probably rolled into mental resistance. That's probably good. So that's a cool little bit. It's a little bit technical. I'm not as well versed on Metamorphosis Alpha as I could be, as I should be, maybe. We should go back and do that at one point. But that was from a community member, RPG Grandma, so I wanted to shout out. And I'm probably have to come back and check out some more in the series, because I do like examining these rules and looking at the differences. So this one might be definitely for the more technically minded. The next one I have up is from blog.trilemma.com. This is called Avoiding Inapt Discussion of RPGs. And it's inapt, not inept, which kind of I had to reset because I kept thinking, did they typo? Was that a typo? Inapt. But I didn't really check to see if is it a word. Can we have? Oh, it is. So so inapt means not suitable or appropriate in the circumstances. And you'll get the gist when I read this. This one, I confess I have pre-read, but just briefly. It doesn't, as it popped on. I picked it up on my Mastodon scrolling this morning, and I had already kind of read it, and I said, oh, I should read this later on stream. So here it is. Avoiding inapt discussions in RPGs. Recently, I learned about Brindlewood Bay's approach to mysteries via the Darkened Threshold podcast. It struck me that it does something that Blades in the Dark also does, but in a completely different way. It avoids inapt discussion about information the players don't have. Brindlewood Bay has a theorize move, where players chew over the assembled clues and propose answers to the whodunit. If their role succeeds, then their theory becomes the real answer. This is the opposite choice that Blades in the Dark made, but for the same root reason. Blades eliminates players interminably planning out their heists, instead letting them retcon in preparations using flashback scenes. In a traditional game where the heist, target, or murder mystery is predefined, players can easily spend a lot of time planning for contingencies that will never occur, or indulging fanciful theories disconnected from the secret truth. You guys are overthinking this, the GM says, or thinks, bored. True as that might be, it's unhelpful advice because the players don't know where they're on and off target, or what they've forgotten, or just plain misremembered. Their conversation is inapt. What's neat is the differing approaches to avoid this. Blades makes planning unnecessary by making player choices retroactively malleable. The inept conversation doesn't need to happen. And this is basically meaning that you don't need to do a bunch of prep. You can get right into the heist and then use a flashback to fill in the prep that you didn't do. So instead of spending 3 hours in the shop wondering, I wonder how much rope we're going to need in a game like Blades, you would end up in the heist and you get to a point where you need 60 feet of rope, and then you would make a check or whatever mechanical thing you would do to see if, we flashed back and remembered I packed 80 feet of rope in my bag, that sort of thing. Okay, in Brindle, so what's neat about holding these up together is how it reveals other design choices that could have been made, as illustrated by 2 made-up games, Brindlewood Dark and Blades in the Bay. Right, get it? Blades in the Dark, Brindlewood Bay, and then they're kind of swapping things around. In Brindlewood Dark, players solve a murder mystery by having a few conversations with the suspects, letting a bit of action unfold, then suddenly launching into an accusation. The accused protests, then the players narrate the clues they noticed, retconning the evidence. So this would be kind of the Blades in the Dark approach. You kind of make the accusation, and then you can sort of backfill in using the mechanics of these are the clues that we found. Meanwhile, in Blades in the Bay, players spend 45 minutes playing the heist based upon the details of defenses and risks they supposedly scouted out, researched, or paid to learn, all made up as they discuss. The higher the danger, the bigger the score. Then they enact their plan. As they do so, they roll for each threat to see if it is really as they understood it. If it is, the plan they made for that part just works. So remember, this is going back to the other things. So they can put all these sorts of assumptions out there, and then they can roll to see which of their assumptions actually were correct. If not, they're back on their heels and reacting in real time to a situation that's become unpleasantly dynamic. If they handle the chaos well, they resume the later steps of their original plan. If it blows up in their faces, they might just need to scrub the mission. Anyway, those are made-up games, but they're 2 different applications of these avoid inaptness techniques. Now I want to overly complicate a heist plan. Blades in the Bay sounds fun. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this. I appreciate the kind of thought process. It's always cool to think about or talk about and just discover new mechanics. And I kind of think that Blades in the Bay thing might work. I think that Brindle Bay technique, I could see being applicable in different ways. I kind of like the idea that you put a bunch of clues out there, and it could really play. And I was thinking about this, like, well, man, if I was want to play in a really low prep game, you could really be low prep. You could really have clues, and a murder mystery could emerge, and you as the GM don't need to know the mystery, right? Who solved the mystery? It could just be, you could have in your mind, it probably makes sense to have in your mind what happened, but at the same time, it could be something that, I rolled a random world event. This world event was an NPC gets killed. Okay. Which NPC was it? Oh, it's the merchant. Then the players stumble upon the merchant's thing, and I didn't have a plan for this. It was a world event, just happened. The players maybe start sussing out clues. Maybe I roll some dice or whatever. Oh, you find a bloody knife. Oh, you find tracks in the carpet. Oh, you find the door slightly ajar that's been forced in. Whatever. And then the players can kind of put things together, and maybe they have some idea of who they think would have killed the merchant. They can roll some dice, and if they did it, then whoever they think killed the merchant did. And then I got to figure out how to make that work, which actually seems like a lot of fun. It's one of those things I really like about those dynamics. I like about having the dice and having these sorts of random systems in place, is that it for me is that same sense of discovery. The players are discovering things, and then I'm back there going, oh my gosh, this is cool. I don't know what this is. Now, I think in the I'm sure in Brindlewood Bay, it's all player facing. The players know exactly what they're doing. So presumably they would also know, and if you're using this in kind of an OSR circumstance, like I'm thinking about, that they would also know. And maybe that takes away a little bit from it because it's different, right? I think there's a different, I haven't played Brindlewood Bay, but part of that, I would think, part of the excitement in solving the mystery is figuring out this thing that was in front of you. But are you figuring it out? You're putting things together, but you're basically making your own puzzle and rolling some dice to see if that's the puzzle. It's not quite the same as, man, I figured it out. I don't know. But it seems really cool, especially if you want to lean into, I think, a really kind of low prep, maybe really sort of player facing kind of stuff, it almost becomes a different game. It becomes, it's kind of like, we're just discovered together. I don't know who murdered this guy. He just turned up dead. So let's all figure out together who did it. It could be kind of neat. And I can see it using for other things. I could see leaning into this sort of system for lots of downtime type of activities. So one of the things I thought about was, well, what if you use something like this for researching a spell, where a player has a spell that they want to learn, and then you work with them and they start sussing out the things that they might need. Maybe you can make some suggestions. Maybe the player's like, okay, I want to learn this, I don't know, some kind of ice projectile spell, ice daggers or something like that. Okay, well, maybe factoring in the power level you're looking at, factoring some things. Suddenly it's like, okay, well, what do you think you're going to need? Or me as a player, I go, well, these are the things I think I'm going to need to do it, right? I'm going to need to, and maybe as a GM, I say, okay, well, how powerful are you looking for the spell? Okay, so third level, that's going to constitute that stuff. Then you might say, okay, well, you're going to, what do we need? Well, we need something representing ice. We need some alchemical ice thing. Well, we need some kind of dagger thing. We need something, right? You just kind of get together, and at the end of it, like you're kind of ad hoc coming up with what the procedure is going to be to research that spell. Oh, I need to go find a ball of pure ice from this other thing. Like maybe that's a little adventure there. Okay, you got to go find that thing. Oh, I need to find this book that's going to tell me this thing. Oh, okay, great. I'm going to need to find a sage to tell me about this other thing. Whatever. Like all this stuff's really cool, but I don't have to mechanically come up with all of it in this circumstance. It could just be me having this conversation with the player, and then if they're rolling dice and it's working, then yeah, these are the things they do. And then at the end of it, you've got this procedure. And if it's not working, then it's like something tells you it's not, however it would be to like, well, it's not actually going to work or whatever it is. Like that's not going to do it. And then you got to go find it again. I don't know. It seems like a pretty neat idea to me. It does change a little bit, kind of mystery or how you're dealing with mysteries in an interesting way. I've not played Brindlewood Bay, and I haven't played Blades in the Dark either. I almost think I like it for the heist kind of thing more than the mystery, just because, again, depending on how you want to play things, the fun of solving the mystery is solving the mystery as opposed to solving the mystery that's kind of beyond your control, as opposed to the mystery that you're sort of solving by making a roll. But, having not played these games, I don't know exactly how it's going to be. But it's a really cool concept, and I could see messing around with it more. So that's from Trilem Adventures, and I'm going to check here in the handy dandy Lemmy OSR NSR Lemmy community. I don't know. Whoops, that's not it. Let's go back. That's my home page. I need to go. If you want to refresh here. Okay, let's just see if anybody put anything. Trying to fix a lack of sci-fi battle maps on the web. Well, this might be good. It's from the Alexandrian, I guess. Let's go check this out. Is this old? Is this new? It's new to me. It's not particularly new. So apologies if you may have seen this, but let's take a look. From the Alexandrian.net, campaign status module, restocking checklists. So let's take a look. And I'm going to take a sip of, what is this? Pink lemonade Spindrift for the working man. All right. If you're running a sandbox campaign with crawl type scenarios, dungeon crawls, hex crawls, urban crawls, etc., you'll most likely want to restock those scenarios. For example, let's say that there's a ruined keep west of the village in Hex F6. As the campaign begins, this dungeon is filled with rousling bandits who have been staging raids on the merchant caravans and other travelers passing through the area. At some point, the PCs decide that they're tired of being harassed by rouslings, so they track the bandits back to the keep and wipe them out. The keep now stands empty. That's a really easy form of status quo, and it could persist for any length of time. But do you want the keep to stand empty forever? Quite possibly not. In fact, it can be very interesting to have someone else move into a dungeon the PCs have already cleared out once. Going into a dungeon crawl when you already know the layout of the dungeon is a distinct experience and a very different strategic challenge. Plus, the changes made by the new inhabitants can provide cool surprises. So what I'll do when running a hex crawl sandbox is simply list all of the locations that are currently empty. After each session, I'll go down the list and make a restocking check for each location on the list. Usually a 1 in 6 or 1 in 8. If the check succeeds, I'll figure out who's moved in, more on that below, create a new version of the adventure notes, and remove the location from the restocking list. Updating the scenario notes is usually quite similar to doing a dungeon status update, with most of the work being done by simply swapping in a new adversary roster. Rather than doing a diff file for the updated room key, though, I'll take the time to briefly modify my original adventure notes, print up a new copy, and file it in the appropriate spot. There's no way to be certain when the PCs will actually re-engage with the dungeon after all. And here we have a tip. Even in non-sandbox campaigns, it can be fun to restock and revisit old dungeons. For example, in my Tolus campaign, the PCs cleared out the Temple of the Ebon Hand. Later, they hit another cultist stronghold, but some of the cultists escaped. These cultist refugees ended up taking refuge in the abandoned Temple of the Ebon Hand, where the PCs eventually tracked them down. On to restocking mega dungeons. The same methodology can also be applied to mega dungeons. Basically, you want to split the mega dungeon into sectors and then make restocking checks for each applicable sector. There are a couple of different approaches I've used for defining sectors. In my Castle Blackmore campaign, I followed Dave Arneson's lead and split each dungeon level roughly into quarters. In other mega dungeons, I've typically taken a more bespoke approach of looking up for the quote-unquote natural breakpoints in the dungeon. For example, if you've got 2 choke points in the dungeon, all the rooms between those choke points are a natural sector that's likely to be occupied by a particular faction. The most important thing, I think, is for the sectors to make sense to you. As long as that's true, it will be much easier for you to keep track of them and also to interpret the meaning of your restocking checks. There are 2 types of restocking checks you can use in the mega dungeon: empty sectors and disturbed sectors. Empty sectors work more or less like cleared hexes, checking each empty sector once per prep period, although I found that 1 in 4 or 1 in 6 seems to have better results as intervals. Disturbed sectors, on the other hand, involve tracking each sector the PCs enter during an expedition into the mega dungeon and then checking each one during the next prep period. After checking the disturbed sectors from the previous session, you clear that list. Of course, both techniques can also be used in tandem, checking both empty and disturbed sectors during each prep period. Tip: these techniques can also be used with medium-sized layers in other dungeons that don't quite aspire to quote-unquote mega. Other restocking checklists. You can use similar techniques with other scenario types too. For example, if you're running a heist scenario, heists again, and the PCs get made during on-site surveillance, how long does it take for the target to figure out that something is wrong and increase their security? Obviously, you could just make that decision, but you could also drop this onto your campaign status document and make daily restocking checks to see when the reinforcements get installed. This can become quite interesting in a more complicated campaign where the heist is only one of several things that the PCs are juggling at the same time. Sorry, I just need a quick swig. Restocking procedures. The actual process of restocking can be considerably easier if you're using a game system that comes packaged with procedural content generators. For example, you just have to flip through the 1974 D&D manuals to find detailed dungeon stocking tables and treasure generators. On the other hand, these tools are largely or completely absent from 5th edition D&D and most other RPGs. When these tools are absent, I'll often make the effort to create them. There are also a few universal techniques you can use to fake it until you make it. For example, the AD&D First Edition Monster Manual conveniently has exactly 100 pages of monsters. I've done a whole bunch of ad hoc stocking over the years by just rolling percentile dice, flipping to the appropriate page, and then randomly picking a monster on that page. Also think about how you can use tools you've already created. For example, if you're running a hex crawler mega dungeon, you've probably created a random encounter table. You could use the same table to determine creature types for your restocking. This can be limiting, though, as it means you won't be injecting anything new into your campaign. On the other hand, that might actually be desirable in many cases. All right, so that was good. Yes, restocking is good. I think the one thing I would probably do this in 2. It's hard to say because I guess it really depends on your prep. It seems like the one, not issue, but just one thing to probably you want to be aware of in this kind of prep is you're gonna be rolling a lot of those D6s. You're gonna have a whole list of sectors and whatever, and you're going to go down the line rolling. It might be worthwhile to break that up a little bit. Like I might roll 1 die to see if anything got restocked and then maybe which thing got restocked. I don't know if I necessarily need everything to get restocked all the time. It's really just a matter of, I suppose, I guess it depends on how dynamic you want things to be, especially the things that the party's not directly connected to, in terms of, well, if this got restocked way over here, then maybe that sets some other things in motion, which are going to kind of make do cool things for the world. But then I got to keep track of all that versus I'm going to kind of maybe be localized around what the party's doing. But then stuff over there is kind of feel like it's in stasis. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure either approach would work. It probably just depends on how much prep you can do. Though on the other hand, you probably could put everything in a quick Excel table or something similar. And if you've got some Excel foo or Google Sheets foo or automations foo, you could probably have something to kind of roll a bunch of dice at once and say like, yes, these got restocked. No, these didn't. Probably you could even connect those to some other table, make some pivot tables or whatever they are, where you can connect a bunch of these things together and get yourself a really easy to use restocking engine, if you will. All right, that was the Alexandrian, and I think maybe I can take a quick look at Mastodon, see what's going on, if there's anything going on, any interesting. I'm looking for articles. I'm not trying to just go through and read random stuff. Let's see, anything. I'm not going to go too far in here. As usual, if you guys have anything that's interesting that you've seen, feel free to let me know. I'll try to track it down. What is this one? No. Yeah, I wish people would. It's one of those things that I kind of wish there was some tagging or some way to get links. It wouldn't be actually what I really like is a hashtag that's like blog posts or articles, something like that, so I could follow that and get a bunch. Or maybe I'd want something like, I don't know, TTRPG article, so that I just don't get bombarded with articles about anything, because I'm not interested in everything that might hit there. But let's see. Okay, it doesn't look like there's anything in my feed. What's this? We can look at this. It's more of a promo piece. I don't know who Brandon Webster is. Am I for anyone that we follow each other? No. Okay. Well, let's see what this is. This might be something new and improved. All right, so this is from, and again, I have no affiliation with Archstone Press, just happened to find it randomly. So if it's good, bad, or ugly, I will take neither credit nor blame. This is posted. They have their website's archstonepress.com. Introducing the Years of Adventure. The Years of Adventure is a tabletop role-playing game that takes characters across lifetimes as they learn, adventure, live, rule, and leave a legacy throughout the years. Pivotal moments in this game often come down to seconds and minutes, but the weeks and years leading up to those moments are just as important. In long campaigns of the Years of Adventure, characters journey through their entire life, gaining skills and abilities as they go from inexperienced youths to seasoned veterans. Eventually, characters may even retire or perish while the game continues on through their successors. And this is a sandbox fantasy tabletop role-playing game by Brandon Webster and Ethan Watson. Inspired by epic fantasy series such as the Malazan Book of the Fallen, Earthsea, and the Song of Ice and Fire, the Years of Adventure was designed to create sweeping, large-scale stories with a personal focus. Characters in this game may delve into ancient ruins and dark dungeons, explore mystic places, and battle magical beasts, but they're just as likely to negotiate a peace treaty with a neighboring monarch, lead soldiers into a large-scale battle, or spend years researching the secrets of immortality. They may even take a break and live quiet lives for 10 years before the call of adventure pulls them back out once again. 10 years seems like is that a random number, or is it? I felt very specific. Like you could take a break, but your break can last a decade. Let's see what we got. So, the scope of this is rather large, right? Because we're talking about a dungeon delving, exploration, social situations, diplomacy type stuff, large scale battles, downtimey type things, or just living a quiet life for a while. So they got a lot going on. Principles. The following are the core principles used to guide the design of the Years of Adventure. So principle number 1, player agency, embrace the sandbox. In sandbox play, there are no strict plots to plan out and follow. The Years of Adventure is designed to be character-driven from the outset. There's no story except the one created at the table as a result of play. The game provides the tools for GMs to fill the sandbox and systems to encourage players to choose their own adventure. Choose their own adventure. Characters, so that was principle number 1. Principle 2 is characters change over time. There are no rigid character classes in the Years of Adventure. Instead, characters are defined by their skills and abilities associated with those skills, referred to as techniques. Skills are improved and acquired organically over time through experience and training. A warrior does not always need to be a warrior. They can learn to lead their people as a civilian, develop a love for music, or even learn magic. They may even do all of these things, adding new skills as they age. Long campaigns may see characters through their entire lives, and no person is the same throughout their lifetime. Next core concept is actions have consequences. In sandbox play, the world reacts to the character's actions. Characters may improve the world through their heroics or suffer the consequences of their poor choices, even up to injury or death. When combined with player agency, this also means that nothing should happen to the characters at random. The characters must always have a choice. And finally, the rules are a guide. Ultimately, it is the GM in communication with the players that decides what happens in the game. The rules and dice are meant to facilitate and guide play, but they are not the final arbitrator. They should be used or discarded in whatever manner provides the best experience for everyone involved. All right, so those are the core concepts, which I like, or the core principles. Old school meets new school. The Years of Adventure is part of the growing movement known as the New School Revolution. It takes inspiration from old school tabletop RPGs and the games based on them, but it also pulls from modern gaming innovations. It isn't afraid to drop tradition to meet its design goals. While the Years of Adventure does not always look like other games in the NSR, it does strive to meet many of the same goals of the movement. For GMs, this means streamlined rules that build a fast-paced, easy-to-run game with the tools to make your life easier. For players, this means simple rules and a free-form character system that is quick to learn, but has the mechanical depth to ensure that no two characters will ever feel the same. For everyone, the game can serve all of your sandbox fantasy gaming needs, from one-shots to 100-plus session campaigns. One of the best parts of the NSR and the OSR it is descended from is the diverse library of adventures and settings made for its most popular games. Compatibility with these adventures is a major design goal for the Years of Adventure. Systems overview, the toolbox. There are many subsystems that make up this game. When learning the game, the recommended approach is to treat each of these systems as tools in your toolbox to be learned and used when you need them and safely tucked away when you don't. The first and most important things to learn about in the Years of Adventure are skills and skill checks, the unified resolution mechanic used in the game. Skills are the primary attribute used for defining characters and their abilities. Skill checks are used to resolve any uncertain actions that a character might take, from jumping over a chasm or sneaking up on an enemy to deciphering magical phenomena or even leading armies in battle. The only actions skill checks are not used to resolve are related to combat. Even then, skill checks and opposed skill checks may always be used in a pinch to resolve some unknown action. If you understand skill checks, you understand the basics of how to play this game. All right, so the skills and skill checks are at the center of this particular RPG. Second to skills, characters have techniques. These special abilities modify and enhance characters' skills to solve problems in unique ways, often by enabling, improving, or removing the need for a skill check. There are over 400 techniques in the Years of Adventure, although even the most powerful characters are likely to acquire no more than 20 of them, and inexperienced characters often only have 2 or 3. For new players, there are character origins, which provide a recommended combination of skills and techniques to get into the game as quickly as possible. Characters also have a number of other important attributes, such as hit protection, determination points, stress and injuries, armor class, effort for magical characters, and motivations. Many of these attributes will be familiar to those who have played other fantasy tabletop role-playing games, while some are unique to the Years of Adventure. Motivations, for example, are used to guide a character's role-playing by aiding them on skill checks they are particularly passionate about. If they fail to succeed on their motivations, however, they may acquire stress, which can only be removed with time and relaxation. There are a number of systems characters will interact with through play, such as common encounters, social encounters, injuries and scars, overland and sea travel, and the various ways of using magic, such as freeform rituals, when the established magical techniques just aren't enough. These systems are largely optional or situation specific, but can greatly enhance the enjoyment of those particular activities. I'd be really keen to see what a freeform rituals looks like. There are also a number of systems available to facilitate sandbox play. First and foremost is the year action system, which governs character advancement and the pace of a campaign in general. Characters use year actions to lay out the significant things they are doing in a year: questing, training, researching, participating in faction or domain play, or resting and relaxing after doing all of those activities. Domains and factions are the last 2 pillars supporting the sandbox, and both are tied into the year action system to serve as a guide to long campaigns. Domains represent entire governments, while factions represent the guilds, powerful families, mercenary companies, rebellions, religious organizations, and other smaller groups acting within a domain. There is a robust system for armies, navies, and mass combat to manage the type of interactions that may come up when resolving the actions of domains and factions. Finally, in conclusion, the Years of Adventure has been a long labor of love, but is still very much a work in progress. While most of the rules have been written, the game still has a long way to go before it's ready for release. That hasn't stopped us from enjoying it in its current state. There have already been almost 100 hours of enjoyable playtesting done with this game. If this article has intrigued you, there is a Patreon where you can access the latest playtest version of the Years of Adventure. Patreon supporters will receive monthly updates to the game, including a PDF of the final version when it is ready for release, in addition to adventures, settings, and other supplementary content for the Years of Adventure. All right, so I mean, it seems like a really cool system. There's a bunch of stuff that's intriguing about it. It's covering a lot, or it's promising, it's asking to cover a lot of ground. And not that it's impossible, but I think it can be very difficult for games to hit all of these different things, right? We're going to be doing, domain play and faction play and a long lifetime type stuff, and then also have all the nitty gritty for things like adventuring. Now, maybe they'll stay away from dungeon crawling like in Mega Dungeons. Maybe more like something you might get in Pendragon, where you're going to have going into layers and things, but they're all compact. You're not going into Stone Hell using Pendragon. You're going into something smaller, but it's certainly intriguing, and I wish them the best of luck, and I'll follow along and see what's coming in. Ian says, I need more domain play. Don't we all, Ian? Don't we all? But it's definitely neat if you're looking for something that's going to really look at the almost like I get a sense of like Crusader Kings or a Europa Universalis type situation where you might have the span of a whole lineage of characters over families and what's happening and coming. Hopefully, I mean, I feel like they're trying to channel a little bit of that. Who knows how long or how far they will get in that, but it could be pretty neat. But it's cool. It's something different. Something different. So that was from Archstone Press. And then I thought, got about 10 minutes left here. I would just look at what's going on in Kickstarter, pick out some stuff. I'm not really just trying to look at the like what's biggest and baddest. I don't know what the best filters are here. I'm in tabletop games. They've been looking for projects that are on Earth. I don't know what that means. Oh, I guess anywhere. Sorted by Magic, I guess. I don't know if there are what other filters are there. And I definitely want live. Okay. Is there a way? Do you think if I put TTRPG in here, it might work? Or is that maybe RPG? RPG in tabletop games? Let's see what we get. Okay, so we've got Medieval Barracks, 3D printable STLs, pay what you want. And in some of these, look, I'm not, I'm just going to look at stuff that, like, I don't use 3D printed stuff. I don't have a 3D printer, so I'm not going to check out this one, not to say it's not good or worth your time to look at if you want to, but I'm going to look at stuff unless somebody tells me, and I'm happy to look at chat and someone says, go check this out. I'm going to probably minis, things that aren't going to be on the top of my list to check out unless either they just look awesome to me, in which case I might get some. Oh, here's a funny little thing. So I was with Diogo yesterday, and we were at the Complete Strategist, which is a very old school, pure RPG, not pure RPG, sorry, pure gaming store. It's not a lot of the more modern stores you find in New York City, at least, and probably elsewhere, have as much of are as focused as much or more on community and youth programs and play as they are in selling things. So if you go to, say, the Brooklyn Strategist, their actual games for sale area is tiny. It's a great place. It's got a really good setup for, I think, for Warhammer. I think they have a whole sectional part set aside where they do a lot of Warhammer gaming and their tables. And they do sell games, but their games for sale section is small. 20-sided store in Williamsburg, similar. They have a little bit more space, but things are laid out. They're giving a lot of it's whereas the Complete Strategist, which is super old store, is just crammed and cramped and small narrow aisles and just stuff overflowing, shelves that are just bowed. I mean, like look like they're sagging so hard they're gonna break any second with stuff. Right? It's you go to something like 20-sided store and it's more spacious stuff. But if you're just looking at games, like how many games? What am I gonna find here? Selection, not nearly as much. Well, in Daniel's game, I'm playing a human fighter, and I've just been using some kind of random mini. He doesn't actually use minis very much, but people have them, and every once in a while he'll throw them on a map or even something just to get us idea of sort of the layout. It's great. And I was like, well, maybe I'll get myself a fighter. I've survived a couple of combats now, a couple of sessions. Maybe I can get myself a fighter mini, and if he ends up dying tomorrow, well, I'll still have this fighter mini. It'll be fine. And I'm looking at and their mini section looked like either they were waiting for some more minis to show up. It was a little bit bare, and it looked like a lot of things were just sold through. But they still had a decent number. And I'm going to tell you, there were zero human male fighters. They had all kinds of some of these. I guess they're putting out minis that are named after specific characters, maybe from I don't know what, but there were like special characters. There was, half elf, this, that, the other, this three class combo. This all things going on. I'm looking at all these, and I have to. And the organization's not the best, so I had to actually I couldn't just look at the one on top. If they had a stack on a post, I had to kind of go back through some of them because sometimes they'd be mixed up. But all these different combinations, all these different crazy combinations of characters. And all I want is just a plain male human fighter. Maybe give me a shield. I would have settled for not a shield. I just want a plain human fighter. And they got Bubkiss. Ian says, get a half elf and file down the ears. I would have. I mean, I looked at some of them, but they make the elf ones really elfy. And they didn't have, and there was a ranger, but the ranger they had him with like one version with a crossbow, one version with a bow. And I just wanted a sword and board human fight. I didn't have it. They had half orc fighters that were like, but look, on the one hand, if you want anything crazy, they've got it. And I like that there's a lot more variety. I get it. But it was just funny that I just want this. I felt like an old man yelling at clouds a little bit, where it's like, where's my human fighter? Because I just wanted this, what I thought would have been the most simple mini. Wasn't there. So if I saw the Kickstarter on here with human fighter minis, male human fighter minis, I would get one. Flask World Dungeon Tile seems interesting, but I'm probably not going to use it, so don't need it. More STL files. Seems like that's a big thing. There's Dolmenwood. Look, everyone knows about Dolmenwood. It's now at almost 900,000 pledge with 28 days to go. I don't think I need to look at that. I've gone through I did like a 3-hour stream where I went through the preview book, which was a very generous book to put out there. So not going to go into that one right now, but everybody who needs to know about that one, I think knows about it already. We've got Poison's deck. We can check this one out. Discover Poisonous Specimens. This is by, who is this by? Where is this by? Diego Pisa Artworks. Ready to expand the use of poisons in your games? And you can get a whole bunch of cards. How it works. 1, players extract toxins from poisonous specimens in the wild. 2, players or poisoner NPCs synthesize a poison dose from the raw toxins collected. The more raw toxin samples, the stronger the poison dose will be. I've got one example of this guy here who's called a Cabru. And then we have a description at the top, a crustacean with needles on the upper part of the body. We have some information about the poison, symptoms, corrosion from within and bleeding from eyes and mouth. That's gross. Debilitation, life points / fainting. Maybe he's trying to keep it generic, so I would assume that's hit points. Antidote is the oil of Silg, and its habitat is the swamps. And then this is an antidote sample, essence of Ernaruta. You find the mountains, find the woods. The leaves of the Ernaruta tree, white and smooth in texture, are sought after for the production of a special liqueur called Essence of an Ernaruta. An individual suffering from nephrotoxin is healed after ingesting 1d6 leaves or drinking from a bottle of essence of Arnaruta. And there's a little, I guess, kind of flavor text. The drink, while very good, is not well known. It is usually found in small family-run inns. And there you go. So this deck will have 48 cards, 24 poisons, and 24 antidotes. And looks like it has this kind of a book. And there's a book, I guess, as well. It's very well illustrated. My only problem with this stuff, and I was actually talking to Daniel about this last night, is poisons. Poisons, to me, are one of these things that just adds difficulties. Obviously, you can handle them. Nothing that you can't handle, but it adds difficulties. I don't like to think of the players using poisons. I don't think it's heroic. I don't even think it's heroic if you're a bad. It's a very specific. To me, it's a very specific thing for like your evilly assassin types, not everybody. And it gets to the point where if poisons were super easy to get and well-known and accepted, then everybody and their cousin would use them. Everybody would have stuff dipped in poison. So poisons either need to be really hard to find, which is kind of like they tend to be, right? You know, you think about, well, the cultures that have used serious use of poisons have very specific creatures. I'm thinking of like that, whatever the name that toad is in the Amazon. And yeah, there are other cases, but they're pretty rare. It's harder to I think, and there is and I think on top of all the cultural reasons why you would not use poisons, that's not easy to do. So this kind of supplement, which is cool and I like it and it looks beautiful, it seems to be kind of well written and everything, is not a path I would want to go to with my players, because I would try everything I could to actually discourage them from using poisons and not encourage them. If anything, I would make it like, if you poison somebody, you are evil. That is an evil, dastardly thing to do. But, you know, that's me. All right, the Arcane Chronicles, Volume 3, Frostfall to Sunfire Dominion. I don't know what this is. Fantasy RPG support book suitable for any system, e.g. ED 1 to 5. I think is that supposed to be like D&D editions 1 to 5, Tunnels and Trolls, RuneQuest, etc. Details lands, history, economics, demographics, etc. So it really seems like this is a settings book. Okay, so it's a third in a series of books aiming at helping fantasy role-playing gamers and games masters add depth to their games. And this depth comes in the form of what? So it's basically giving you a lot of setting information. So an example is the Moot Court. Serves as a gathering of the community to discuss matters of law, resolve disputes, and make decisions. Wereguild, you know, paying for harm, basically. Okay, so if you wanted some deep down depth, this is by Tim Belden. It's their first one they created. It's the first one created, but it's number 3. Interesting. So I guess maybe he did the 3. Maybe just didn't crowdfund them. And it seems like there's maybe a goal or a stretch goal or something to get all 3 of them bound together. Is that right? You can get an atlas. Let's see. So you can get an atlas. That's 1 reward level. You can get a softback of volume 3. And you can get the atlas plus volumes 3 and 4. And then you get a hardback of all 4 volumes. So there you go. I'd like to kind of see how it's laid out, because this looks like it's just in Word. It'd be nice to see a layout example. Cool. Ian says, play something with an honor attribute. Yeah, I guess. I don't. I just don't make. I don't have to, Ian, because I just don't make poisons readily available. So I do not need an honor attribute. And that's kind of like, if you're going to have an alignment type thing, I don't think you need both. I don't think you need honor and alignment. I get you could potentially make. You want to differentiate between someone who's just dark and evil but honorable in their own way, and someone who's just like totally unhinged. And I guess if you're playing with the 9-prong alignment, that's basically your lawful evil versus chaotic evil. But I don't think I need. Yeah, I just don't use it, and I just don't encourage it. and that works for me. If there's some special circumstance where you can get something, like, I'm not trying to artificially dampen it, but I let them know, like, that's one of the list of things that are evil. Poisoning someone is on the list. So I'm not going to stop you. I'm just not going to encourage you, and I'm not going to just put poisons everywhere to make it even. Because if you have those kind of cards in your game, as cool as they are, you're going to want to put them out there. I'm not going to buy this pack of cards, this great artwork and stuff, and then just bury them. So, for me, it's like, well, this is a great project, but if I add this to my game, I'm going to want to expose my players to it, and then they're going to want to use it, and I don't want them to. We've got Defiant RPG Reign and Legacy. This was an Origins Award nominated. It was returning with nominated. Defiant RPG returns with 2 major supplements. I don't know what that one is. I don't know. Let's see. Runes Fantasy RPG Zine for Shadow Dark. So if you're interested in Shadow Dark, they're starting to ramp up third-party content for that. Starting to wrap up. Something called Badge Quest RPG Campaign Book, which I guess is a supplement for something called Badge Quest. 50 Patrons of the Market Systemless Fantasy RPG cards. I could take a look at this. I have played it. This is by Philip Reed. 50 Patrons of the Market is a collection of NPCs you can drop in almost any fantasy role-playing system. There are zero game stats or rules included in the set. Instead, every card features an NPC illustration as well as a short bit of descriptive text to inspire you. Okay, there's an example. So basically, you're getting there's an example. Get some artwork, and then you get a write-up. I think the only thing that would be nice about this is, I think for something like this, I'd like bullet points, or not necessarily attributes, but give me goals, wants, needs, desires, hatreds, sort of thing, allegiance kind of thing. Just give me it, because I don't want to, if I needed it, right? Oh, the players are at the market, and I shuffle this deck, and I just want to pull one out. I don't want to have to stop and read all this before I can start talking. I want to be able to just look at it and say, okay, well, I can see she's an elf, whatever, and then just kind of go on from there. So maybe the only thing I would want is something like that. There's a Game Master bundle, and again, I have no association with Mr. Reed or any of their stuff, and they have some add-ons. Sounds all right. Let's see. What else have we got? All right, where was I? Oh, here I was. 3DS, 3 more 3D printing assets, some maps, RPG maps for all your tabletop needs. I don't really use them, so that doesn't really help me. Tales from the Astral Plane, 5th edition rules and adventure. Dark Dungeon. Okay, more 3D printable stuff. The Secret Art of Game Mastery by the DM Lair. I guess we'll look at this one. It's probably the last one we'll look at. And just to reiterate, no, I have no connection to these folks. Just coming across it on Kickstarter. The Secret Art of Game Mastery. Bring new life to your tabletop RPG with decades worth of Game Master experience at your fingertips. This is by the DM Lair, Luke Hart. Get 250 pages of Game Master advice, knowledge, and wisdom to elevate your role-playing game. The Secret Art of Game Mastery is over 100 years of accumulated experience distilled into an easy-to-use reference guide. You can get better at running any game in any system and any genre. Whether you're a new Game Master or a veteran, the Secret Art of Game Mastery is for you. I'm not familiar with the DM Lair. Anybody in the chat familiar with DM Lair? Say, are they... I mean, they've got... This has already been... They asked for 10,000. They're already at almost 200,000. So obviously over 2,000 backers. So they are definitely well known and presumably well thought of. But I'm not up on them. So if you have thoughts, let me know. Okay, I saw that stuff. So the bullet points here: learn the core pillars of RPGs, combat, exploration, and social interaction. Make changes on the fly. Engage your players. Decrease prep time. Grow as a game master. Have more fun. Any game, any system. Best of all, the secret art of game mastery is system agnostic. That means it will help you with any and all of the RPGs you play: sci-fi, fantasy, western, D20, YZE, PF2E. It's all covered. I don't know what YZE is, but sure. Here we have let's see. GMing is complex, nuanced, and takes practice. It is also fun, inspiring, and when all the gears are flowing, almost effortless. It is the aim of this book to minimize the frustration and challenge that comes with running games and maximize the joy you will find in playing them. To that end, you will find no better guide out there. That's from the forward, written by Will Earl, host of D&D Shorts. And then there's some exclusive Kickstarter special edition covers, leather covers, what's in the book. So you're going to learn core concepts, learn tools of the trade, teach you all about session prep, prepare your campaign. Okay, so I guess it looks good. I'm not to say I'm dubious, but I'm always, let's say I'm dubious, but I'm dubious. No, I think that I'd be curious to see what people's experiences are. I'm sure there's good stuff in here, though Ian's saying that they've watched the DM layer enough to know that we disagree a lot. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Well, I mean, I'm guessing, look, I'm sure, given the amount of people pledged, these 2,000 people, that these are a lot of folks who are into the channel, or I'm assuming they have a YouTube channel or something. I mean, I'm not trying to play dumb. I've heard the name, I think, but that's about it. If folks here, you know me, how up I am on stuff, which is to say, not very much. Not that there isn't universal GM advice. However, I guess there's no reason to pitch it to only one genre or anything, but I think different systems have different things you need to be aware of. Like if I'm DMing BX, I'm DMing Pathfinder 2nd edition. Sure, there's common things that will help me, but it's a lot easier for me to talk about low prep or do low prep for myself with BX, because Pathfinder, there's just a lot of things to it. And maybe there are techniques that I can use to minimize prep in Pathfinder. But in a generic book, am I going to get those? Maybe he's going to have sections for different things. Hey, for Pathfinder, if you want to get ahead of the game, make a cheat sheet for all the feats that your players have. That way you won't need to go scrambling to look them up. Like maybe they'll have some sections of different games. But there's some stuff where I could say comfortably about BX, hey, if I'm doing a thing, hey, how to GM BX the Hexed Press way, whatever, I could say, hey, lean in this. Those things won't work for another game that doesn't have those things in it. And if I'm trying to be generic, how much can I really touch on some of these strengths, and either to lean into the strengths of one game or buttress a game against its weaknesses, right? In a game like BX, a weakness is that kind of skill element. If you're not comfortable, you don't appreciate some of the ways that it handles the non-skill stuff, then BX, you want to kind of get on top of that and figure out your methodology. If I'm playing Pathfinder 2nd edition, I don't have to worry about that because it's got skills built in. So I don't know how that works, but hey, it's a whole bunch of these are going to get sold or already have been sold. So I'm sure, and like I said, there are a lot more people are paying attention to them. They're paying attention to me. So I'm just going to assume they know some of what they speak. And since they have a channel or some kind of thing where they're putting out a lot of stuff anyway, the folks who are backing it have confidence that this stuff is an extension of the things that they've already, guidance that they've used successfully already. General Nutt says, has found that great deal information from me. They're interested in old school and many sites are 5e only. Well, I appreciate General. I'm glad you found a pearl of wisdom amongst the swine of my blathering. So I'm glad. And yeah, a lot of sites, the 5th edition thing, it's I get it. It's the popularity, right? You just can't. I mean, there's some look at Dolmenwood, how much money they're raising. There's obviously a bunch of people who will drop a bunch of money on OSR, but in terms of people, if you're a website, if I was trying to maximize my, I don't know, marketability, whatever, like I wouldn't have picked old school, indie gaming. I would have gone with 5e because that's where the most people are. It's where collectively the most money and attention is. But never underestimate the power to follow your own heart down blind alleyways and stumbling into holes. Because but I just don't feel that. I was talking to Daniel last night. I don't know if you guys have been watching. Ian, you probably on top of it. I tried watching. I might go back and try to finish it. So the MCDM stuff I mentioned, I watched one of their design docs that they're putting out. I like this. So they're putting out Matt Cobal's putting out some videos where he's going over the design elements of this new system they're working on. And I appreciate that. I'm not interested in their game, at least not yet. Doesn't seem like it's for me. It feels like it's going in the opposite direction than I want to go, which is kind of interesting. But he has, look, I appreciate it and I respect it because he has a kind of game he likes. And clearly he's trying to make this game that he likes. But it's going, whereas my attitude is going one way, he's going way the other. He's talking about in the one game, like, they're going into minis and grids. They're going, I feel like it's going to be very 4E reminiscent. He's said, well, we're not trying to be 4th edition. We're not trying to kind of retro clone 4th edition. And I'm not suggesting it is, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of 4E and kind of 4E adjacent stuff in there. So that's interesting. And then just the other night, I was trying to watch this stream, and I didn't watch it live. I watched the replay or the recording on YouTube, a stream of them playing through, I guess, their next book. So the book that just came out, I guess they kickstarted last year, whenever it came out. What is it called? Flea Mortals, which is a book of monsters. Haven't seen it. I'm sure people love it. And now they're coming one with layers. I forget what the name is of layers that they're doing. And so they put together a stream going over a sample of these layers from this book. I thought, this would be cool because, again, it's another book that I'm intellectually curious about. I'm probably not going to buy it. I don't have much interest in it as a thing, but I'm curious. Much of the same way, like, I don't know if I'm going to buy Dolmenwood. I'm probably not going to get on the Kickstarter Dolmenwood. Maybe I can get a review copy down the line. He doesn't need it. It would just be kind of a nice thing if he wanted to. Just because I think it's great. It's brilliant. It looks amazing, but it's a setting I'm not going to use. I know I'm not going to run Dolmenwood. I run my own setting. That's me. I'm not going to run Dolmenwood. So there's no point. So if I bought it, it would just be me buying it kind of to have it. And I'm at a point where it's not something I feel like I must have just to have. I mean, there's very few things that are at that point. And I don't think there's anything new that's like that. If I must have to have would be like I wanted to buy like an old book I couldn't find before. Like, I could get a copy of this this really old book that I would go for, right? There's nothing new that I feel like I just got to have it to have for posterity. It's not there. But, I think the Dolmenwood stuff's amazing. I'm just not going to run it, so it's of limited use to me. Same thing with this layers. I'm intellectually interested in the layers book just to kind of see what it's all about. I'm not going to buy it because I don't think I would use it. So they're having this stream where they're going into it, and the situation, the scenario, which I think is, and I haven't gone through all of it, so someone who's watched the whole thing can correct me. And I'm assuming they just did one scenario, was a bridge and a mill with a water wheel. So the main physical features here on the map are the river with a single kind of covered bridge or covered style bridge or a bridge with supports going over the top. It was a little bit confusing. I couldn't tell whether it was a real covered bridge, like in New England, an old-timey covered bridge, or it was a bridge, but it had beams going over the top, because it seemed like it had the beams going over the top, but wasn't fully covered. And that's a little bit unclear because they called it a covered bridge, but then it seemed like there were individual beams and you could see, because you could, shoot people who were standing on top from kind of below, underneath them, kind of on the bridge. And a real covered bridge has a full ceiling, so you couldn't do that. So I don't know that I couldn't imagine. And you're looking, the battle map they have is top down, so you can't really see. You just see planks of wood and then some crisscross beams, and it's like, were those planks of wood the ceiling, the floor, like hard. Really couldn't tell, and I couldn't really wrap my mind's eye around it because they're saying covered bridge, but it's kind of a bridge with crisscrossing beams over the top, and I couldn't really tell what was going on. But that's not really the point. Anyway, so you got this river, bridge crossing the river, and a little bit down the road in a way, and I didn't get far enough to get really into it. There's some kind of water wheel mill. That's, I'm guessing, the lair. James Introcaso, I think, was running through. He was GMing this. Matt Colville was one of the players, and a few other folks were players. The scenario you gave was just, it would really, look, the scenario, I'm not going to argue, there's nothing wrong with the scenario. It's just something, get down the bridge. There are bad guys at the bridge. They're forcing people to pay a toll. The monies from the toll are not rolling up to the local lord. So go down there and solve it, which is perfectly fine, right? It really is, look, we all know what we're here for in the stream. We're here to show off this layer, so let's do it. But this game, this stream, I watched maybe an hour, a little bit more. Now, granted, there's some time where you're going, okay, there's introductions and fine. But they're probably 45 minutes to 50 minutes into this thing, and they're not even done with the bridge yet. And the bridge seems to only be like the appetizer to the main course. They're still futzing around on this bridge, and then and they're they're using, like Matt Colville was using some new class, and it looked cool, but it looked kind of crunchy. I mean, it's something they like. They're talking about strain. I'm like, ooh, strain. I like that kind of a concept. But then they're like, well, there's 3 different types of strain, and depending on where the strain comes in, there are always columns. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't need that much. I don't need that much strain. Just give me one thing of strain. I don't know if I need 3 different types of strain. And other folks are doing everything, and it was all very cool, very 5e. And I just kept thinking, and what I was thinking in my head was like, man, this is reminding me of all the stuff that I have not appreciated about 5e, and just how long this thing is. Because I remember looking at I have it on my TV, and it's not showing me, when you have it full screen, it's on your TV, it's just playing. You don't see the progress bar. So I didn't play it knowing how long it was. I think I remember at the end, I'm like, how long into this am I? I'm like, poop. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still on hour 1, and this is a 4-hour program. I'm like, oh my gosh, 4 hours for this layer that seems like it's essentially 2 kind of areas or rooms almost. Maybe there's more. Again, someone tell me. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's so long. And the other thing was, as I was watching this going, okay, so the concept of having this as a layer, because I look at it in the first one, I'm thinking of layers. I'm thinking of, this is going to be something really unique and interesting. What makes this a layer? Do I need a book for a scenario of crossing a bridge? I don't need that written out. Like I need, or what I'm thinking of a layer, I'm thinking, ooh, it's some layers and everything, like some kind of crazy dragon's lair, some kind of Tucker's kobolds catacombs filled with funky traps and all. Like I'm thinking like, ooh, what is in this layer? And this one is super mundane looking from what I saw. Now there might be more. Okay. A water wheel, a sort of a mill with a water wheel, which if I was writing it out, I would think, I don't know much about mills. They seem to me to be about one room. He's got a room, you got the structure with the milling stones on the inside, and pretty much, I feel like that's kind of it. And then the gears and whatnot to come over and then attached to the water wheel on the side, that's kind of churning and sending. And maybe there's grain storage somewhere. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but it doesn't seem to be, on first blush, doesn't seem to be super complicated. It's a mill. I feel like if you look at one, like look at a windmill, what's on the inside of a windmill? Feels like maybe one room, maybe it's got 2 floors. I don't know. Not super complicated. Bridge, other than the fact that they seem to kind of, with these beams and everything, kind of made it seem complicated. Also not complicated. I probably would have gone with a non-covered bridge, just a regular bridge. And then they made a point of, the GM says like, oh, and you got this river going through it, and like, hey, well, you know what? Like they what they did was smartly, they end up pushing one of the bad guys, one of the more major bad guys, into the river. And he goes, well, I've got luckily for us, this layer has rules for the river. Now, as far as I can tell, those rules never came into effect. Maybe they just forgot in the heat of the stream to actually apply whatever mechanics for the river. And of course, I was always thinking like, well, what mechanics do I need? How strong is the river flowing? Are you going to drift 5 feet around, 10 feet around? Like it's not, but I get it from a 5e standpoint. These can all be like, I feel like you get kind of super complicated though. It's just kind of like, well, how hard is it to, I mean, even then, like what's the DC for my swimming track check to either just kind of stay stationary or swim forward or do I get pushed back? In addition, this person was they basically got restrained and were under the water. But they just, the mini just sat there on this one spot on the map, and I kept waiting for, well, what's the river do? Where's these river rules? And the river rules never seem to come up. And the other thing, and again, I'm gonna put on my little critical hat here. They said that in Flea Mortals, they introduced the idea of minions, and I wanted to go like, come on, man. You did not introduce the idea of minions. You reintroduced the idea of minions from 4E. I'm sure that was just a mistake in the wording, because I know they know minions. I know he loves 4th edition, and minions was one of the best things, maybe the kind of best single mechanical thing from 4th edition. But that's not an MCDM creation. Okay, that was bringing it back is kind of great. But I felt like the way they said it was like, this is our innovation, minions. And then they kind of explain what minions are. I'm like, that's nice, but you didn't do that. I'm sure somebody did it before 4th edition, maybe. I don't know. But it was just interesting. I feel like I got to go back and watch the full thing. I'm not trying to damn it or say like it's not a product worth getting. It was just interesting to me because, one, just from a gaming standpoint, this area is not worth 4 hours of, that's a whole session you're doing just with this thing. And what's that phrase I like to use? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And my thinking is no. It's really, it's not. Like, this is not a super cool lair. It's a water wheel and a bridge, and it's taken 4 hours to go through. Like, my goodness, like that. That a 4th edition, like that's like a 4th edition. That is a 4E style battle right there. And of course, which makes sense is, I would have thought like, we'll just burn the bridge down and leave. Well, no more tolls across the bridge. Why is that? We burned it down. I think in a game I probably would have said, if it was a campaign thing, the local lore definitely said, you better not burn down that damn bridge. That's the only way people get in and out of my little kingdom here is through over that road. And that road needs that bridge. So do not burn down the bridge, kind of thing. But it just seemed like, I don't know, as a, if I had a book of layers and I wanted to showcase a layer, I don't know, bridge plus water wheel mill. Especially since it's just it seems to be a mundane thing. Maybe, like I said, maybe there's some big surprise back there. I will go through and maybe I'll forward a bit to see what's in the mill. It looked like, because at one point he's got Roll20 up there, and he's kind of zooming in and moving the map around, and it showed a bunch of those tokens inside the mill. So it might just be like, here's just a huge monster spot, and we're just going to go to town on it. Ian says there's a preview packet that has a cool Mind Flayer layer. Cool. I see. That's like, why not show off the Mind Flayer layer? I don't know. Maybe they'll do more of them. I really like Matt Colville as a personality. I've appreciated his videos, not so much lately. And I'm appreciating the stuff he's doing with his. So I feel like I'm coming across as some kind of hater who's just picking on them. I'm really not trying. The thing is like, I don't watch a lot of stuff like this. So his are ones I go out of my way when I see them pop in. I'm like, oh, I am curious to see what he's saying or the products he's putting out, even if don't feel like I'm going to buy them myself. So the only reason why I'm speaking on them is because I am genuinely interested on his take on things. And so, which is not, a lot of these other folks, I'm not. I don't look at their stuff. So I'm not trying to be picky or hard or a hater. I'm sure it's good, and I'm sure it's quality. I'm sure it's something people want. Just from my standpoint, it's interesting about both those things. It's like it's highlighting like, man, how slow is this 5e stuff going when it's 4 hours and this is your one thing. Though again, they might have done that because they were only going to have one stream with one layer. So doing it in an hour would have just meant a really short stream. I'm not sure. Elder Goblin says that they're a huge MCDM fan, but they've been largely disappointed by the fact that the game they have coming out is heroic tactical fantasy. Wait, isn't that exactly what D&D / 5th edition is? Well, yes, I think Elder Goblin, and this is where I think what they're going for is more actually 4E, because they want to lean more into the tactics, meaning movement on that sort of battle level, combat level. So whereas now, sure, 5th edition has that too. You can do that, but you can also do without it. And they try to give it to you both ways. And people have, look, I'm not going to argue. I've gotten into arguments with people. Oh, you can't play 5th edition without a grid, or yes, you can, whatever. Like, you know, the D&D 5th edition may have some stuff that's easier to run with grids, but they don't explicitly tell you that you need to have grids. From what I'm gathering from what I seem like he said is, like 4th edition, which did do this, 4th edition also explicitly required minis and grids. They didn't give you really, I don't even know if they gave you an alternate ton of option where, hey, you don't want to use grids, do this. Like, it was just like you using minis, were just minis and grids. That's it. And they're making that same choice, say we're running minis and grids. I think that's because that's how he likes to run games. And I think if you look at, I think you're probably going to get a good sense of what that game's going to be like if you go back, what was it, Dusk, his actual play using 4E. I think you mentioned this too, that his game is not going to be 4th edition. It's not trying to be a retro clone of 4E, but I think it's going to borrow a lot from 4E, and it's using 4E. I would think, I'm going to say just that from what I'm feeling, 4E is sort of the spiritual predecessor to this game. And it's going to have a lot of the kind of tactical things like 4E did, and the same use of minis and squares, where you don't, to the point where I think his game, which I think he mentioned specifically in his first design video, was, we're not going to tell you feet. We're going to tell you squares. How much can I move? You can move 5 squares. That kind of thing. How far can I throw this rock? 6 squares. That sort of thing. So it'll be interesting. And I am, like I said, I'm not really interested in the system to buy it or play it myself, but I am very interested to see what he does with it. And I'm also curious to see, well, how does that work? Because I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of, like I said, and this is where I give full credit to him. Clearly, in his games, when you watch his stuff, when you watch his actual plays, watch his things, this is clearly the kind of game that he is super excited about, that he likes to play, the way he likes to run his games. And I'm totally down with that. And I think you're putting like, hey, this is the game. This is what I love. This is my passion. And I want to make a game for that. I think it's totally admirable, as opposed to like, well, let me pick on whatever. Let me try to hitch my star to the latest fad. No, this is the kind of game I want. This is what we're gonna do. And I think there are a lot of people who also enjoy that kind of game. So I'm sure it will do well. I just don't think it's for me. And it's just interesting that, whereas I'm looking for how, I mean, look, I don't want, if I can run it without a VTT, if I can run Theater of the Mind, I want that. If I can get clean rules that are slim and trim and just some good guidelines for adjudicating stuff that's not covered by the rules, like, that's what I want. I want the most bang for my buck, and I want to spend the least amount of bucks possible. I want to be cheap and efficient with my bucks spent in terms of gaming. That's kind of where I'm at. Whereas he's going for, like, we're going to have 800 pages of rules. It's probably going to be on the crunchier side. We're going to be using grids and minis, and hey, that's awesome. I'll be curious to see, is that what people want? Like, what does the market research say? I have no idea. I mean, Shadow Dark did really well, and Shadow Dark is kind of pulling, it's like 5e light in a sense. They're going, as Ian said, maybe a 4e, 5e hybrid that's going crunchier. Maybe even crunchier than Pathfinder. I don't know. I don't know how far. I don't know how close it's getting to like 3rd edition Pathfinder or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how much. I'd be curious. I don't know where I feel like I would put 4E on the crunch-o-meter, because in the one way, everything, there's a lot of, I think, crunch in the math and the mechanics, but a lot of that is not player facing, because you get these nice little cards that give you your abilities, and so in some ways it's very streamlined from a player perspective and GM perspective in the way everything's organized, even if the mechanics behind the scenes to get to that part were very crunchy. I'm not sure, but it seems like it's going to be a lot. And we'll see. We'll see. I just watched that the other day. I thought I'd mention it because, man, 4 hours for that. And then also just as a sample, like, look at these cool, awesome layers, a bridge and a water wheel mill didn't strike me as particularly cool, or even really needing a layer, but maybe there's something good going on. And I will go watch maybe the second part of it. Maybe I'll forward the stream to like the last hour and a half and see what's going on. Ian says they actually doubt it'll be crunching the 5e. Oh, cool. Well, look, Ian, you are much more dialed into the MCDM stuff than I am, so I'll take your word for it. And Ian also says they like the Chain of Acheron campaign a bit more than the Dusk campaign, more cinematic and political good stuff. Yes, I mean that's what I liked in his. I agree with you, Ian. I was much more a fan of all the factions and the political maneuverings and stuff like that than I was in the Dusk stuff. But I could tell when he was running the Dusk thing, I think he enjoyed that more, if that makes sense. When seeing how these different, because there is something fun to seeing these tactical abilities that you have in something 4E in this tactical space, using your grid, using your minis, and doing something. I know he really likes that a lot. I mean, he is a tactics person. He likes playing the mass battles with tactical kind of focusing on tactics, and I think he really enjoys that. I don't know if the 5e thing, 5e per se, gives him that same enjoyment. So I remember at one point, it might have been in one of the last videos that he ran of the Chain of Acheron, and they kind of were doing that thing where there's like the evil version of the party shows up, and they had this confrontation, a bit of a fight, and it was fine, and it had some tension involved because you had these kind of which characters sort of matched up with other ones, but it was just kind of a mash. Like these characters kind of slammed into each other, and this was just people using abilities, and there was really no thought to positioning or anything. It was almost as if they were in a Napoleonic battle, and the two lines just went and kind of smashed into each other. Whereas when he's playing the Dusk campaign, and they have like the elf village, and there's things are happening, and people are doing things, it just seemed more, I think, dynamic and tactical in a way that I felt like he liked. You can see, I felt like his eyes like lit up, like, oh, and then someone would do something using one of their abilities in an interesting way. He's like, oh, that's really cool. We'll see. It's cool that people are doing all these very, very different things. That's all. Ian says it's 100% not going to be rules light, but I don't think it'll be going anywhere near GURPS territory. Well, I think they said something like they're thinking it's going to be like 800 pages, Ian. So I don't know what they're going to fill all those pages with. There's got to be something somewhere. We'll see. You'll be you can be my MCDM eyes and ears and let me know where they're headed. I'm definitely be up to watching more of the design vids and stuff. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to call it a stream. Everyone, have a great weekend if you're watching or listening to this live. Had a couple of downers this week, couple of tragedy yesterday. Just reminds me, remind the folks that you love them. Be kind, be safe, have fun. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.